With over 13 prizes and gold medals in medicine and neurology, a Stroke Fellow from University of Calgary, Canada, brightest minds of the Cambridge University, Dr. Sweta Adatia is my guest this week. A very warm welcome to the new episode of Ink and Insights. Dr. Adatia has over 50 publications in various medical journals and with 2 books. She's highly scientific and to date has touched over 50,000 lives. She has worked in over 5 continents serving patients and is an excellent speaker, coach, and a trainer. She's invited to talk on TEDx and is the founder of My Brain Design, a 21st century tool mapping the brain preferences to the ideal career path for high school students and adults. Dr. Sweta Adatia is a multi-talented and has achieved mastery in many fields other than medicine and neurology. She speaks several languages, completed her Visarad BA in music in harmonium, and is inclined spiritually and has a lot of interest in the science of alternative medicine. She has completed advanced pranic healing and pranic psychotherapy courses and has done a formal hypnotherapy training from New York in past life regression from the master Dr. Brian Weiss, the author of very famous book, Many Lives, Many Masters. She is an avid aura photographer and is also trained in neuro and biofeedback as a therapeutic modality for various neuropsychiatric diseases from California, USA. Dr. Sweta, welcome to Ink and Insights with Sumit Sarvasamir.
Thank you so much, Sumit, for that wonderful introduction, and welcome to all the listeners who are going to be with us today. What a wonderful invite. I've never been to Nepal, so definitely this also gives an opportunity to visit all the people there. We do see a lot of patients from Kathmandu being in Dubai. So it's
Right.
always that, amazing cultural nuances which we appreciate. I mean, Dubai is a melting pot. So it's always wonderful to hear from people.
Absolutely, Sweta. You must visit and plan to come to Nepal sometime soon. We will plan something on that. Sweta, what really fascinates me is your interest in diverse field. How did you develop your interest in music, science, and spirituality?
So very, very interesting. It goes back to a family in which I'm born. So my parents were both into medical fields and none of them had anything to do with spirituality. So like a little kid, you're always curious to know what is happening. So I was literally 16, technically 16 when I asked my parents, why am I born? What is the purpose of being here? By then, I think I was already in the first year of medical school. And that is also a little bit of a history, So there are 2 kinds of marriages in India. There is love marriage and arranged marriage. Same way, there are 2 kinds of careers, love career and arranged career. Unfortunately, I got a lot of marks. So they said, oh, why don't you try medicine? So I had to have an arranged career with medicine. But 5 years of MBBS, 1 year of internship, 1 year of pre-medicine, 3 years of medicine, 1 year of pre-neurology, 3 years of neurology, and 2 years in stroke. All the experienced people know that when you live with someone for 15 years, you fall in love. So same thing happened for me. Arranged became love. So that's how I continued the journey in medicine. But when I was that 16-year-old kid, I asked my parents, what is the purpose of coming here? Why am I born, So my parents got completely perplexed and said, we have no answer. I think we need to wait for a person who can answer this question. And a couple of weeks down the line, my mom was seeing a television program and somebody was speaking. She was an amazing orator. And I don't know why my mom felt possibly go and talk to her. I said, who is she, And then in the next day newspaper, a big, picture of her saying that there is a program which is going on and she's going to speak in a hometown. I belong to Gujarat, a small little place in Gujarat. So I said, wow, that is wonderful. I think you asked for it. Let me go and ask her. So that was my first exposure to technically spirituality. And she was one of the spiritual masters or spiritual teachers in Chinmaya Mission. And that was my very, very, very first exposure. In fact, I went and told her, Sumit, madam, thank you very much for talking what you're talking. And she says, no, we are sannyasis. I said, what the hell is that, So a lot of things were completely new to me. I had no exposure whatsoever when it comes to spirituality. But then, life unfolds. Medicine. I still remember that embryology class I was sitting in and that one little cell, an ovum and a sperm meeting, becoming a zygote and a baby, that was fascinating for me. So I always wanted to know behind the scenes, what is consciousness, what is happening? And that is how my journey sort of, culminated into a parallel processing science spirituality with lots of confusions initially, over confusions. and then a lot of inquiries, and then further confusions, and then more inquiries. I think the inquiry and this is still going on, so it's been a fascinating journey.
Right, right. So I will touch upon that spiritual side, but let me begin, by exploring on the neuroscience part of it. What are some of the most exciting advancements in neuroscience that you have witnessed in your career?
Absolutely. Neuroscience has been absolutely fascinating. If today somebody says, oh, why don't you treat kidney and liver and heart? No offense to them, by the way, the cardiologists and nephrologists, but I would say no, I would repeatedly choose still neurology, because brain is, I think, the masterpiece, right? Brain is one organ which just orchestrates every little thing that happens in our body. And if we were just to put things in perspective, 100 billion neurons, trillions of synapses. If I were to map the memory capacity of the brain, I will have to stack all the pieces until Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world, and still it won't be enough. 2.5 petabytes of memory. So, with that exceptional power, I always wondered, what is really happening inside the brain in terms of its optimal efficiency, in terms of its optimal performance. So my lab, called the Limitless Brain Lab, started to work on it, and coming to the new advances, which now the neuroscience has, we have so many ways to scan the brain. We have so many ways to look inside the brain. And there's been a lot of interest in sort of the psycho, neuro, physio, immuno, endocrinology, which means technically most diseases begin as a mindset or a brain set problem, and then sort
Wow.
of trickles down onto having physical issues. So
So
really
it
what is
begins from
fascinating.
brain initially.
Yes, exactly. It initiates from the mind, from the thinking processes, from the brain issues. So if you don't just alter something in your gut, you can also alter from your mind or the brain. So that absolutely fascinates me, that every single disease pretty much has an intersection of neurology one way or the other.
Right, right. So that you think is the most advanced stage of neuroscience as of now.
Oh, as of now, I'll tell you a few things which are going on, which is just
Yeah.
absolutely fundamentally mind blowing. There are people who
Right.
cannot speak, right? There's speech issues. So there are, I would say, programs being created where the speech can be brought back. There are programs created for vision, people who lose vision. Now, regeneration or growing new cells have always been a tough thing, right? Once the
Wow.
cells in the spine, once the cells in the retina, which is behind your eye, the layer, and once the
Right.
cells in the brain are dead, they're
Mhm.
dead forever. But there is a lot of current research which is going on regeneration, on the stem cells, repair processes where we can refix it or rebuild the brains. And then my lab has been studying something called, what are the ways in which peak performers brain perform. So for example, leaders, Olympic athletes. I had a parachute jumper who jumped 27,000 jumps and zero errors. I had
Right.
this wonderful woman who stood on Burj Khalifa. Literally, it was not. It was a stunt by standing on Burj Khalifa. So I'm always curious that why are certain brains resilient? Why are certain brains doing what they're doing? And our lab has come up with something very interesting. And in fact, I was myself blown off when I said, okay, let me have my brain as well scanned. Let's see what's
Did
going
you
on
scan your
inside.
brain?
Yeah, 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 of course, to see what is going on, because I strongly believe that it's always experiential medicine which helps,
Right.
experiential or subjective experiences which make a big difference in life. So, what we have seen in these peak performers or in these peak individuals is very interesting. The two sides of the brain talk to each other. Very, very important. The two sides of the brain do talk to each other. So, there is
Oh,
always a left brain and a right brain, and then both
right.
the brains are talking to each other. What is very interesting, other thing, what has been seen is that their emotional regulation is very good. Their mood
Right.
regulation is very good. There is coherence. Both sides of the brain are simultaneously talking to each other. The moment we have certain waves, which is called gamma, and I'm sure you are quite well versed with all the meditation practices and pranic healing practices which we were talking about,
Yeah.
that coherence or synchronized activity is allowing for the brain to function at the optimum. So it's just incredible to see how different components of the brain, the moment we are invested in it, we develop them, how the outcomes change, not just from a success in terms of material wealth, but also happiness, peace, bliss. What I think these are all very, very valuable. Material
Right.
things can come and go, but the fundamental basic de-stressed living or a blissful living is something what is highly desired.
Right. Right. And what are some of the common misconceptions that people have about the brain and its functions that you often
Thank you for
encounter?
asking that. I think the biggest common misconception is we use only 10% of our brain. I mean, there's nothing like that. We use only 7% of our brain. That's absolutely not true. We do use all the brain all the time. It's just about where do we start, where do we end, what parts are more developed because of our consistent practice over time. And of course, there is something called the genetics, which means I am born in a certain way, and then there is epigenetics. I'm raised in a certain way. Both of them contribute. The second very interesting myth, and which I love to explore personally, is also the men and the women brain, right? There's a
Right.
lot of this about how does a man's brain behave and then a woman's brain behave. There's a very interesting joke that the woman's brain largely has a shopping lobe, which is, and the man's brain has a football watching lobe, which is very unique and distinct in the two brains. But yeah, that is also a myth. Essentially, we are all wired the same. A little bit
Right.
of nuances from an evolutionary perspective, yes, holds true, but largely we all have the similar type of the base brain that we are born with.
Right. Right. And how do you see the intersection of neuroscience and technology shaping the future of healthcare and everyday life?
Absolutely. It's coming big time. The AI has helped us a lot. We all saw during the COVID pandemic, right? The development of vaccines was super fast. All the things, the data that we were able to manually read, now we are able to compute those data. The cloud capacities are expanding. The architectural formulas are developing. So AI is playing a very, very, very prudent role. So I think what we see in the future is going to be very personalized and individualized care. So, for example, a patient with depression, I might not be able to just give an antidepressant. Possibly
Mhm.
there will be a few more biomarkers which will help me to design. A simple Panadol for migraine or paracetamol for migraine will be very different for Sumit and very different for Shweta. So this is
Right.
all going to be because of that large potential abilities of the AI to capture my genetic data, the way I metabolize things, and the way I am able to deliver certain molecules in my system. That's going to be a big time this. In fact, there's a professor from Japan who has talked that there's something very fascinating coming very soon. It's called the brain net. There's a beautiful,
Mhm.
beautiful documentary about it where in future, let's say 30, 40, 50 years down the line, I don't know if we will be there to see it, but it's going to be very interesting to see
Let's
that you
hope
will
we'll
be
see
able,
that.
let's hope we will see that, and a few more people with us also see that
Yeah.
certain emotions we will be able to upload them, we will be able to download them. It's all going to be very interesting, from the modulation that you want a certain designer brain, certain type of the brain. I mean, it's futuristic, but I'm sure that all the fascinating fiction movies that we see, they do land up being true. I still
Right.
remember of a movie showing, oh, there's a video conversation which is possible many, many years back, and look, now we
I
are
know.
chatting across the borders. So yes, it's going
Exactly.
to be very, very fascinating.
Right, right. And how do you see that neuroscience contributing to our understanding of complex human behaviors such as decision making and emotions?
Absolutely. That's my favorite topic. I think that's yours favorite topic as well,
Yeah.
right? I hear a lot of your podcasts under that the umbrella of decision making. I think, see, we are all fundamentally having three brains. As I'm talking to you, I have a little brain stem at the back, which is firing, which is giving my heart beating. That's why I'm surviving. I'm breathing because of that brain stem. And then I
Mhm.
have a little emotional brain, or the limbic brain, or the reptilian brain. It's always in a state of protection mode. It wants to protect me from threat. So there's
Okay.
always this fight, flight, fear, freeze going on, because it just wants me to remove all the negative threats that is coming in. And then there is an advanced brain right in the front, the green part that you see, that is called the frontal brain. So the brain
Mhm.
stem, the emotional system, and then the frontal brain. The frontal
Right,
brain, or the prefrontal cortex, is so called the seat of human consciousness. Now,
right,
that is the main part of the brain which allows me to have what is called the discrimination, the good and the bad, the judgment, my mood regulation, the way I want to control my emotions, my balance. How do I make sure that I'm not continuously in fear? How do I make sure that I can plan things, what I can do it in future, etc. So that is one part of the brain which has to be matured, which has
right.
to be developed in order to have these qualities. So any behavior that we see now, very common example would be the teenagers. I'm sure the listeners who have teenagers as their children, it is
Mhm.
so difficult to get them a point across. They are full of energy, they're full of irrationality, and that's thanks to the frontal lobe.
Mhm.
Most people do not develop it by the age of 22 or 23. In fact, a lot of people are telling now that why don't we push the limit of driving or getting a license from 18 further beyond? Why don't we push the voting limits? Because this frontal cortex is really necessary for a lot of decisions. So when it
Right.
comes to the experiments which are being done, or also the integrative practices, I'm a great fan of neuromodulation, both from modern perspective and also from the ancient perspective, from the ancient wisdom, the Eastern medicine or the Eastern wisdom that we have.
Right.
Whatever we do, whatever we are going to be offering, if we are able to develop this prefrontal cortex to the T, we are able to mature it enough and develop it, I think a lot of our emotional problems would be sorted. A lot of people are in stress. When I am in my clinic and I ask this question, 0 to 10, what's your stress level? To my surprise, most people, and especially that's what the country also where I'm living, but I don't know if that's
Right.
true across the globe, everyone would answer 7 and above. Very few, 10 to 20% would be under 5. So this is a constant sympathetic, I would say. That there are two systems:
Right.
sympathetic, which is like the fight flight, and the parasympathetic, which is my baseline tone, my
Hmm.
baseline physiology, which is happening. Most people are constantly firing the sympathetic tone, and hence the stress, all the problems that we are seeing. So that is fundamentally, I think, with all these practices, with all the nuanced developments, we are going to change this. There will be
Right.
a massive change which will come in.
Right. And, Sweta, you are also interested in this sphere, and I'm equally interested. How does this, meditation and mantra chanting, influences our brain?
Absolutely. So, very, very interestingly enough, so I always have this very interesting thing. So, my mom never believed in all the spiritual this of it, but she
Mhm.
was working in a lab when I was not born yet. And all
Right.
those 9 months when I was in the womb, she was listening very passively to this Gayatri mantra, the chanting of
Yeah.
Gayatri.
Yeah.
And she never understood that because obviously that was passive. And then I was a very delayed speaker. I never had my speech until I was two and a half, three. There was all lot of hula going on there. There was ENT, pediatrician. So many people were called. My dad's an anesthetist, so they said, "Oh, what is happening? Why is the baby not speaking?" And finally, they understood that the baby is not hearing enough because of the small nuclear family. So they pushed me to my grandparents' house, and there a lot of people, everybody is happening. So I start to speak, of course, very, very, very hesitant speaker, but then I start to chant this mantra, the Gayatri mantra. So to my parents' surprise, I was able to chant that entire mantra, and they said, "We have not taught. Nothing has happened. What went wrong, or what went right?" It was because of those 9 months of listening. So that was my sort of the first love, or the first this for Gayatri chanting, although I never understood what that mantra meant for, or the meaning of it for a very long time. That was sort of a go to mantra. So when I would be stressed, when I would be upset, it was sort of an automated behavior to start that. And then many, many, many years later, the significance with my spiritual teacher started to expand and saying that, oh, mantra has this ability or this capacity. And then I wondered, why don't I bring those mantras, meditation practices into the lab and see what is happening? And the very first subject, the guinea pig so called, was me myself. So I said, okay, hook my brain up, let's see what is going on in the brain. So fundamentally we have four different brain waves in the brain. As I'm talking to you and as you are listening, both of us are engaged. There is a fast rhythm called beta which is kicking in. The moment we will close our eyes, we will be relaxed, there'll be a slow alpha which will come in. The moment we meditate, we go a little deeper and we develop something slow further called theta. And when we go to sleep, it's delta. So, modulation of all the four waves is very, very, very important for general brain health, for every kind of the functions that we do. And I also want appropriately the waves in the right location. For example, beta, I cannot have at the back of the brain. Beta, I need right in the front. I need theta only at the back of the brain. I need the alpha to be balanced. I need the alpha to be at a certain peak and frequency. So these are the nuances in the brain which allows us to have better outcomes, which allows us to have better functionalities, both in terms of cognition, in terms of speed of learning, in terms of studying styles. I can very quickly understand what is going on. In fact, learning also is quite overrated only for intellectual learning. or IQ and intelligence based learning, but there is a big huge intuitive learning part which we often forget. So these kind of waves also help in that access to the intuitive learning. So when a mantra is chanted or when a meditation practice is done, you are trying to support or modulate these functions of the brain waves. They are helping us to get to the sort of the part or the brain that is important to open up these channels, important to open up these access. The way the mantra is spoken, the way we use the intonations, there are certain ups and downs. If you particularly go and check out some of the Buddhist chants, if you go and check out some of the Vedic mantras, certain particular rhythm is there. There is a little bit of a silence and then another rhythm and then a silence. So it is also activating this parasympathetic system or the vagus nerve, which we just talked about. So it's not just doing a physiological change, it is doing a chemical change, it is doing a structural change. To the surprise, there was a professor called Dr. Herzl. He did this fantastic study. Some 20 pundits were studied in India who were speaking the Yajurveda, the shlokas which were continuously being recited over and over again. What he found was the hippocampus, which is a small little tiny area around in the limbic, which is very important for short term memory. It actually had an increased volume over a period of time. So you can not just change the waves, you cannot just change the chemicals. Structurally, you can alter your brain for good as well.
Right, right. And you often feel the vibration inside your entire body, not only limited to brain itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think my favorite go-to is Humming Bee, and with International Yoga Academy and American Academy of Yoga, where I sometimes teach certain programs, we have done
Mhm.
very interesting things when it comes to Humming Bee. So Humming Bee technique, seemingly very simple. You're just taking a deep breath, and then you're just doing which is more from your palate. You're actually using a vibration, as you rightly
Right,
mentioned, which is trickling down the body. What you are doing is also you are sending certain frequencies with which the cellular engagement is happening. So I
right,
think frequency is often an underrated thing when it comes to allopathic medicine. But
right,
if we go back to Einstein, I think he said E is equal to mc square. So the energy and the matter are transmutable. And that is exactly what is happening. The vibration essentially is creating that energy force. It is also changing the electromagnetic field. We just, as limited allopathic practitioners, we understand only physical body
right,
or the physical brain. But there is also another layer. There are, in fact, 5 layers if we go on to the Indian traditional systems, the Pancha Kosha, what we call. So, in those
right.
layers, there is an energy body as well. So, what are the vibrations affecting that as well? So, you expand or you correct or you change that energy field as well when you're chanting. The moment you enter
Absolutely.
a room, which is well, a lot of people are chanting, and passively you will start feeling that mental calmness. Why is that happening? You're not doing anything actively, you're just listening, but even that passive listening is making these physiological changes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even sometimes when you enter the temples, it's often said that it's been conscripted in such a way that it sort of resonates, or it helps evoke some energy within you. So it's
and,
there. It's
and a
there.
temple, and thank you for bringing that, because these are the places which were designed in such a way that automatically your healing would happen from various regards. Healing
Hmm.
just from the mental perspective of bringing you calmness, the HRV. If you go and really do certain experiments when the temple bell is ringing, or the lot of people are visiting there, you will see the heart rate variability changing, the pulse of the body falling, your heart rate variability increasing, which means now you feel much calmer, much lighter. And very other important and interesting thing is there are smells which are there. The
Hmm.
smell is a very powerful gateway. So I feel there are two major gateways to your mind. The best way to, because if somebody is thinking very fast, let's say there is a car which is going at 150 kilometers an hour, the mind
Hmm.
speed is at 150 kilometers an hour, and I tell them, stop, think less, reduce your speed. So that is
Right.
not possible because that is not the mind's property. But I have two switches. I have two ways in which I can get that control. One is smell and another one is breathing. So when we
Wow.
enter the temple, these nice smells are actually doing a great job of activating or stopping the function of this limbic system or the emotional system, which
Hmm.
means automatically I become rational.
Yeah.
Automatically I think better. Clarity emerges. My
You calm down.
dysregulation improves.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
everything was really designed in the form of scientific, I would say, perspective. But now science is trying to, of course, decode that or uncover whatever was seen.
Right, right. Shweta, and you have also taken a training on, I think, if I'm not mistaken, on past life regression. So, what's your thought on that?
What a wonderful question. I was when I did that. I read the first book, Many Lives, Many Masters, and I
Yeah,
was damn skeptical. I said, I do not even remember what I did yesterday, and now you're telling of asking me to remember something which happened in my past life. First of
I
all,
know.
in a lot of cultures, we don't believe in past life, right? So I'm
Yeah,
like, what is going on? What is the truth? What is the reality? So I literally, booked this meeting with Dr. Brian Weiss, and I said, I have to come and meet you. So I went, amazing person, and I went and spoke to him. I said, I'm a neurologist, very, very critical, extremely skeptical of what all this is about. I understand there are evidences. So
right,
he absolutely listened to me with his calm fervor, as usual, as he is, an amazing individual. And then he says, are you here for 21 days? I said, yes, I'm here to learn the past life regression. He says, wonderful. So a couple of days passed by, and then he came to me and he said, analogy. I'm just going to give you today the analogy, and tomorrow we'll do some experiment. I said, yeah, sure.
right.
What is the analogy? If I want to bring a file which is not seen on my desktop and the file is lying in the cloud, what do I do? I access the cloud, I put that file, and now I put it on the desktop, and now you can see it, and now you can open that file. But that does not mean file was not existent. So
Right.
that file, that past memory was lying somewhere in that past life energy body. And now
Hmm.
you're putting it and accessing into the current subconscious so that it manifests into your conscious to give you that answer or whatever you're seeking. That sort of,
Hmm.
struck me. And then next day, he calls me on stage, and we're doing this little experiment. We are some 20 people out there. Beautiful, beautiful center. It's called Omega Healing Center in upstate New York. And then, of course, the question was, do you have something burning, something which you are worried about, from the distant past in this life? And I said, yes, my parents have forgotten my birth date because they're still
Right.
fighting. Is it 28th or 29th? Because there was already 12 o'clock past. And can we help them resolve this problem? So it was very interesting for the healer there, and said, wow, okay, wonderful, let's work on this. So we go regression, regression, regression. Now, luckily, due to my brainwave, I'm a little bit more suggestible to hypnosis, or I can get into hypnotic this pretty fast. So I was able to get there. And then, interesting enough, I saw my own birth literally, literally like a 4K movie recorder. What was the room like? What was the smell like? What was my mom wearing, and what did my grandmom bring in the tiffin? There was a big huge clock. The gynecologist was missing. He was not there, and he comes in later, 20 25 minutes. There was a big coat which he was wearing, thick glasses, a muffler, and I am candidly, vividly seeing every single detail of it. So my friends were quite impressed and said, oh my God, we have to go and talk to your mom about it. The next day, and obviously it was India, so we called my mom, and I started to tell, did you wear this pink polka suit? Did this happen? Did my grandmom bring this? And my mom is shell shocked. How on earth do you know all of this? I said, because they went into the regression, and I never
Right.
realized 5 hours passed by the time I was watching this. So the point is, that was sort of my change of from skepticism to accepticism. But what
Right.
very interesting is happening is in the neuroscience part of it, 11 million bits per second of information we consume. 11 million bits per second. So just
Wow.
imagine what is going on inside. But when I'm conversing with you, when I am in a limited form, I am just using 50 bits per second. So the question
Okay.
is, where is all the other information going? It's all
Hmm.
going and storing into these subconscious video recorders, and that can be accessed. And one of the ways to do that is the past life regression. I'm not a fan to do it for fun. I mean,
Right.
I had a very different this, but I really would say that people suffering from phobias, people suffering from significant memory issues, significant anxieties, real problems from mental instability, or something
Right.
which they are really stuck on. The rumination is so deep that they cannot come over it. possibly this can be one of the therapies to help them out.
At least we can sort of say that the whole issues and debates around past life regression as a myth is not true.
So, from the evidences that Dr. Brian Weiss has got in, from if we read about the first patient, Catherine, as well, and then a few more patients, I think from the evidence point of view, this seems to be like a plausible thing which is happening. Now, I always tell people that before you discard anything, go and try it out for yourself. If you
Right.
did feel something connected, if you did feel, it's for you. And I think as a rational medical practitioner, I always would like to see whatever can help the patient, whatever can
Right.
help. And if that is changing the life of the individual, I'm game for it.
Right. Sweta, finally, what motivates you the most in your work, and what do you hope your contribution will achieve in the field of neuroscience?
So, as Limitless Brain Lab, we are based out of Cambridge, and part of it is also in Dubai. As the Limitless Brain Lab, what we want to do is we want to help the younger generation. We want to craft the brains of the generation in a way that all the future nuances of artificial intelligence and all the stressors which we are anticipating to come in, we are already preparing ourselves for it. We are preparing resilient generation. We are preparing brains which are well prepared. We are preparing to harness the maximum limitless potentials what an individual brain has. So
Right.
personally, my own mission and vision and the entire lab's vision is also to prepare such kind of programs, to prepare and give them something which is very instantly utilizable, very practical, very scientific, which they can take home and then start practicing. For example, some of the very simple breathing practices, some proper meditation practices, certain yoga poses, certain types of the work that they need to do, mental work, certain type of the cognitive work, which can help them change or transform their life. We are already living in a information superhighway. Google is trying to give us everything that it can.
Absolutely.
ChatGPT is now trying to give everything. But the point of the fact is we need transformations. So I think
True.
very practical. That is the vision for us at the Limitless Lab. In fact, our program it's called the My Limitless Brain, and largely 12 to 18 years, and of course the adults, both
Right.
are our sort of the targets because that is where we feel because of the neuroplasticity, the changes that can be harnessed right at
Right.
the
Right.
early age can really live long, and that means a better person, a better community, a better society, better nation, and better world at large.
Right. So I wish you good luck with your vision. And I'm really honored to have you in my show. Thank you so much for your time, Sweta.
Thank you, Sumit. Thank you. What a wonderful conversation. And I'm definitely seeing you in Nepal.
Sure.